Hello from the NFL Scouting Combine here in Indianapolis. I'm Phil Milani alongside Matt Boyer and Steve Atwater. We finally got to hear from some college players here today as running backs, O-linemen came through. And the big news, though, today was Kyler Murray's numbers. He got measured. He's 5'10" and 1/8 inches and 207 pounds. Steve, let's start with you. Do you think that that's a big deal, 5'10" and 1/8 inch?
I think it is a big deal. I think some teams were worried that he would be under 5'10", but him being just a little over 5'10", hand size over 9 inches, over 200 pounds, I think is going to bode well for him. I think he's going to go relatively high in his draft.
Yeah, I think that the weight was a good thing for him, just adding a little bit of bulk. But I will say, Matt, there's only one starting quarterback in the NFL who's under 6 feet, and that's Russell Wilson.
Yeah, but we talked about this earlier, right? The teams that love Kyler Murray are going to love him regardless. It doesn't matter what happens with the measurements. They know how tall he is. They've seen him in person. I mean, this is not going to come as a shock. If you like Kyler Murray, you're going to draft him regardless of what his height and weight are here at the Combine. I think it is disappointing he's not going to throw or take part in any of the drills. From a competitor standpoint, you probably want to see that. But, again, I think that teams are going to love Kyler Murray or not love him regardless of what happens here.
What do you think about that? You want to see him throw the ball a little bit, right?
Absolutely, because the other thing, too, is this is one of the only times that evaluators get to see Murray throw after Haskins, who will throw after Locke. When you see all of those guys back to back to back in the same controlled environment, it really gives you a great idea for what's happening and how these guys look next to each other. So instead of just on film, I think that from a competitor standpoint, it's a huge disadvantage for him, and from an evaluation standpoint, also a disadvantage.
I guess the flip side to that, though, is that, hey, if you throw at your pro day, you know those wide receivers, you got a little bit of timing. Steve, what do you think about it?
Yeah, you have a little bit of an advantage because you have a lot of familiarity with your wide receivers. You know where they're going to be. You've been throwing to them for 1, 2, or 3 years. But I think for Kyler Murray, it's not a good move. But, hopefully it'll work out for him because teams do like sometimes the unknown. But with him only having started one full season, teams definitely wanted to see more of him. And he's just not giving it to him. And hopefully that doesn't come back to bite him.
Steve, as a safety, what would you think about facing a smaller quarterback like that?
Well, the first thing is, I got to make sure I break down and be ready for him to try and juke me.
Yeah, he's pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, I realized that he would probably have some problems in the pocket, especially if guys stayed on the line of scrimmage and put their hands up. But if he tried to scramble or anything, that's when it would pose problems for defensive backs. When he gets into the secondary, how shifty he is and how fast he is, he could run 30, 40 yards on you. And make it really tough on your defense.
The other top quarterbacks here in Indianapolis measured prototypical size, talking about guys like Drew Lock, Dwayne Haskins, Daniel Jones, all came in around 6'3" and above, 6'5", right. 220-plus pounds. The other measurements that came out today here, Matt, were the offensive linemen. Interesting that one of the top tackles, Jonah Williams, the product out of Alabama, a little bit short in his arms. I guess they're 33 and 5/8 inches. Does that mean anything to you?
No. I mean, it goes back again. If you like Jonah Williams as an offensive lineman, an eighth of an inch here, or it's not going to matter. I think he's still going to be the top of the class when it comes to offensive tackles. One guy who I did think was interesting was Dalton Reisner from Wiggins, Colorado. Of course, Kansas State. He played all up and down the offensive line. I thought he was probably the most impressive in his interview. He said he was NFL ready, really wanted to make sure that teams knew that no background stuff on me. I'm ready to play day one and compete. And I think Williams is a guy, too, who's going to come in and compete on day one. So those two were very interesting for me to see today, just how they interact with the press.
Yeah, you always find that offensive linemen are pretty smart individuals, very educated about what they're talking about. We also caught up with an offensive lineman. His name was Connor Mcgovern.
Yes. Oh, man, wouldn't that be interesting to have two Connor McGoverns in the building? Connor McGovern, really good player, Penn State grad. He even talked about how a lot of times people come up to him and say, "Hey, Connor, nice game on Sunday." Like, I'm still in college. I don't play on Sundays. Yeah. It's kind of funny. And he's a heck of a player, though, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's there in one of the later rounds, we take a shot at him. I'm not sure if we do that at 10 or not, but if he's there in the second round, don't be surprised if we take a shot.
What about some of these other guys like Jonah Williams or Juwan Taylor, something like that? You think they could go offensive line with that 10th pick?
I doubt it. It's certainly possible. I think, I'm kind of, as a defensive guy, I'm hoping that they go defense. Either with a cornerback or a middle linebacker or even an interior defensive lineman. Coach Fangio mentioned in the press conference that, we need to improve at all three levels there, and I think those will be the positions that we focus on if we decide to go defense.
Do you think O-line maybe, Matt?
It's not the sexy pick. I know it's not the pick that Broncos country really wants just because, it's not an exciting pick, but I will say that the top of the class, Taylor and Williams, could definitely step in right away and make a difference. I do think that we've seen offensive linemen go very high and make an impact right away, and the Broncos do have a need there. So, I mean, it makes sense, but again, like Steve said, it's not going to please a lot of people on the outside.
Mike Munchak would like it, right?
Yeah, Mike Munchak would be a huge fan at 10,
exactly.
Taking Jonah Williams.
Exactly. Well, it seems like we've been here almost all week, and the players will finally hit the field tomorrow. The running backs and the O-linemen will be out there along with the specialists. Steve, what are you most looking forward to finally drills started?
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to see the running backs do drills where they're catching the football. I like to see if they have good hands or hands of stone where they're, those clang. Because I think in today's NFL, we talked on the radio a little earlier today, I like to see Royce Freeman be able to improve his, pass catching abilities out of the backfield. That way when he steps on the field, teams won't just load the box and know that we're running the football. We get them the ball a little bit more in space against those linebackers.
It's important to do.
Yeah, very important to do.
You remember going through the combine yourself?
Yeah, briefly. I remember a small
that 40
amount.
time, maybe?
No, I forgot about that.
Matt, what are you most looking forward to tomorrow?
Tomorrow, definitely the shuttle drill for offensive linemen. You want to make sure that, the footwork is there, they're light on their feet. The 40-yard dash for a big guy, not that important. The 10-second get off is interesting. That first 10 yards to see how far
explosive.
Right. That's what you want to see. But I mean, 40-yard dash for a 6'7", 300-pound offensive lineman, not that big of a deal. But I do want to see the offensive lineman just from a footwork standpoint to make sure that everything's where it needs to be.
We got a story on DenverBroncos.com about an offensive lineman who was roommates in college with our pick from last season. So Bradley Chubb, roommate. So
I heard a story about that too. So I'm looking forward to checking it out.
You have to check. And that was a nice tease, Steve.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. All right, that's going to do it for our coverage here on day 2 in Indianapolis. We'll have much more coming up tomorrow, recapping a full day of drills out on the field finally here in Indianapolis. All right, for Matt Boyer, Steve Atwater, I'm Phil Milani.